Good morning. Welcome to our worship service at the First Unitarian Church of Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm Sarah Stewart, the minister here. It is wonderful to see all of you this morning. I'm leading worship this morning with our Director of Music, Will Sherwood, our Director of Faith Development, Juliet Donaldson, our Children's Coordinator, Abigail Hannaford-Riccardi, and our Assistant Director of Music, James Haupt. Eugene Rossi is volunteering on tech. We are pleased to welcome back Patrick Chatham on cello as our guest musician. Here at First Unitarian Church, we strive in loving fellowship to honor the sacred, connect with each other, and serve justice. We are a welcoming congregation. Whatever your age, race, class, nationality, sexual orientation, or gender identity, we are delighted to have you with us this morning. We are worshiping as one congregation in many places. We have people here in the sanctuary and people joining us online. If you're here in the sanctuary, while keeping your mask on, feel free to participate in all the unison prayers and readings and sing the hymns. If you're at home, the words to the readings and the hymns will appear on your screen so you can join in as well. We'll have a social hour with snacks in the garden following the service. Once you're outdoors, masks are optional. I have an additional announcement this morning. If you look in your order of service, you'll see our beautiful insert. Next Sunday is our Stewardship Sunday and Opportunity Fair. So church like normal at 10:30, and then we have a special luncheon for everybody, activities for children, tours of the church, including showing off the new kitchen, and other parts of the church, and opportunities to learn more about all the different groups in the church, how you can get involved, and how you might get connected to other groups. There's opportunities for volunteering and also opportunities to feed your spirit, to join our women's group or our men's group or get involved in the work of the church. This event is rain or shine. So please come next Sunday. We'll be doing our eating outdoors. If it's pouring, we're going to put the food on the front porch of the church so that folks can eat there. If it's nice, we'll be in the garden. And you'll be able to, with masks on, go around the whole church to find all the other activities. And we hope make a financial contribution to support the ministries of the church in 2022. So I hope we'll see everybody next Sunday for Stewardship Sunday. If you're online, you can like this video to help others find us and subscribe to our channel to find more content. Everyone can stay connected to the church through our website, firstunitarian.com, our Facebook page, and our newsletter. If you'd like to receive our newsletter, that's really the best way to stay in touch with everything that's happening. Go to firstunitarian.com and click subscribe to our newsletter at the bottom of any page. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. We live by these truths. Everything changes. Everything is connected. Pay attention. We are called to love more, and we are all in need of grace. Treat all people equally, including yourself. This life will end, even for us. Be kind, listen well, let the past go. Welcome the hard questions. Keep going. Respect the humanity of every person. Humility can lead to real transformation. Craving leads to suffering. There's no good in being right, but ineffective, and alone. Ego gets in the way of effectiveness. The last 10% is the hardest. A full belly makes all other virtue possible. People are more important than things. Repair the world. We're all doing the best we can. The universe is a generous place. These truths of our hearts open before us today. Amen. we light this chalice. Please rise in body or spirit to renew the covenant of our church with the words printed in your order of service and appearing on your screen. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all. Opening hymn is number 115 in your gray hymnals, God of Grace and God of Glory.
Welcome to our second week of Camp Athena. Children are invited forward to watch today's story with Abby at the table. It will also be broadcast on the television screen if you would rather stay in your seats. Today's story is called Prometheus and his gifts to humanity. One fine day, Zeus gave two of the Titans, Prometheus and Epimetheus, the task of creating animals and humans to populate the earth. Each creature would be given gifts to ensure their survival. Prometheus, whose name means forethought, was extremely wise, and he decided he would create the humans using the gods themselves as a model, while his brother, Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, would create the animals. Epimetheus gave gifts to the animals to ensure no one species could be destroyed by another. He gave wings to the birds so they could fly from danger. He gave speed to the rabbits and the horses so they too could flee predators. He gave horns and pincers to others so they could defend themselves. He made sure each creature had a way to stay warm at night, giving some feathers, others fur, scales, or a hard shell to live in. He gave each animal different foods to eat. Some would eat grasses, others fruit, and some he allowed to eat other animals. But he made sure they were fewer in number so they would not eradicate their plant-eating neighbors. He designed limbs for each creature so they could move in comfort, with fins, hooves, paws, or claws, depending on their needs. Epimetheus was so engaged in his creations that he forgot all about the humans that Prometheus was creating. Prometheus had taken earth and water and mixed them to make clay, from which he fashioned humanity. And when he had finished, he rushed to show Epimetheus, "Look, brother, humanity has come alive. Let us give them the greatest gifts of all, for humans are by far the finest creation on earth." But all the gifts had been given. There were no more gifts to bestow, and humanity was left unarmed, unshod, and naked, without the means to keep themselves warm at night or defend themselves from other animals. Prometheus could not bear the thought that his creation, unlike the other animals, would not have the means to survive, and he decided to help. Firstly, he stole from Hephaestus, sorry. Firstly, he stole from Hephaestus the secret of fire, so that humans could warm themselves at night and cook their food to make it easier to eat. From Hephaestus, he also stole the gift of invention, the ability to make weapons and machines to defend themselves and grow food. And from Athena, he stole cunning and cleverness so that humanity could outwit their animal cousins and ensure their survival. When Zeus discovered what Prometheus had done, he was angry. Prometheus had not asked permission to bestow these special and rare gifts. And now humans would become like the gods, capable of creation and invention. Humanity was now a threat to the natural order in the cosmos and a threat to the gods themselves. To punish Prometheus for his recklessness, Zeus chained him to a rock high in the Caucasus Mountains, where every day a giant eagle would come and eat his liver, which grew back overnight, only to be eaten again the next day. But Prometheus suffered in silence, for though his body was bound, his mind was free. He did not regret his actions. He knew he had given humanity gifts that had transformed them from helpless creatures to a race that could create, invent, and inspire. But Zeus also had a plan for humanity, a plan that would keep them in their place. But that is a tale for next week. Blessed be. And now we are going to go up to Camp Athena. So if the children and our teachers would like to line up at the door, we will head up to the agora.
Please join me in the common prayer, the responsive reading number 650 in your gray hymnals. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth. Doubt is the key to the door of knowledge. It is the servant of discovery. A belief which may not be questioned binds us to error, for there is incompleteness and imperfection in every belief. Doubt is the touchstone of truth. It is an acid which eats away the false. Let no one fear the truth, that doubt may consume it, for doubt is a testing of belief. The truth stands boldly and unafraid. It is not shaken by the testing. For truth, if it be truth, arises from each testing stronger, more secure. Those that would silence doubt are filled with fear. Their houses are built on shifting sands. But those who fear not doubt and know its use are founded on rock. They shall walk in the light of growing knowledge. The work of their hands shall endure. Therefore, let us not fear doubt, but let us rejoice in its help. It is to the wise as a staff to the blind. Doubt is the attendant of truth. Please continue your own thoughts and prayers in silence. In this time of prayer and meditation, we share the joys and sorrows of our church with one another. Lorna Pezzanelli lights a candle of joy for the birth of her step-grandson, Maxwell David LaForce, born September 22nd under a full moon and at the start of fall. We rejoice with Lorna, and we hold in our hearts all those who are suffering, especially those who are hospitalized or ill with the coronavirus. May our hearts go out in joy and in compassion to all in our community who need our prayers. With that compassion in our hearts, across the distances that separate us, we say together the prayer of Jesus. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Nope, use the mic.
All right. So that's much better. Wow. All right, it's nice to see so many familiar faces in the sanctuary again. It's been a long year and a half or so of my not attending church services. I was asked to do a stewardship moment about why I come to church and why I give to the church. So I am happy to say I feel like this church offers me a chance to practice my faith, to search my sense of truth, and as our mission statement says, to serve justice. That's an important part for me. I was able to raise my children in the church. Barbara Merritt performed the marriage ceremony for my husband Sten and myself, some 36 years ago, and we've been faithful attenders ever since then. So I have family, faith, I have friends here. I do a lot of fun stuff with the various people I've known over these years. And I think it's an important, part of my life. As I said to Sten last night as I was preparing to talk today, I said, well, it's really the source of my whole social network. And he said, oh, you poor thing. But it's kind of true. This is an important part of my life. I just retired from a short career in teaching, and Sten and I did our wills recently, and we've made a commitment to provide some monies to the church after we pass. That's a piece of the stewardship that we think is important. So we give annually, and we'll give in the future as well. And I hope all of you will consider doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. All our ministries at First Unitarian Church thrive because of your support. In the past week, we have published a beautiful video created by members of the church, which welcomes newcomers to our community. You can see it now on the church Facebook page. Teachers and parents are preparing for our young teenagers to take the Unitarian Universalist Comprehensive Sex Ed curriculum this year, Our Whole Lives, which we have not been able to offer during the pandemic, but we have a large group of young people taking it this year. And our senior high youth group began meeting with their new coordinator, Brenna Duffy. Your giving makes a difference. Everything we do is possible because of your generosity. The ushers will circulate through the sanctuary to accept donations. You may also text 844-906-2338, followed by the amount you wish to donate, or scan the QR code in the order of service. You can also go to firstunitarian.com and click Give Online at the top of any page. I invite your generous contributions for the good work of First Unitarian Church. Our first reading is from Acts chapter 9. Meanwhile, Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any who belonged to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now, as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do." The men who were traveling with him stood speechless because they heard the voice but saw no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. For 3 days he was without sight, and neither ate nor drank. Then Ananias, a disciple of Jesus, went and entered the house. He laid his hands on Saul and said, "Brother Saul, the Lord who appeared to you on your way here has sent me so that you may regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit." And immediately something like scales fell from his eyes and his sight was restored. Then he got up and was baptized, and after taking some food, he regained his strength. Our hymn is number 86 in your red hymnal, O God, our God, to whom we turn. Please rise and bow your spirits. Our second reading is the poem Truth Serum by Palestinian-American poet Naomi Shihab Nye. Truth Serum. We made it from the ground-up corn in the old back pasture. Pinched a scent of night jasmine billowing off the fence, popped it right in. That frog song wanting nothing but echo, we used that. Stirred it widely, noticed the clouds while stirring. Called upon our ancient great aunts and their long, slow eyes of summer. Dropped in their names. Added a mint leaf now and then to hearten the broth. Added a note of cheer and worry. Orange butterfly between the claps of thunder, perfect. And once we had it, had smelled and tasted the fragrant syrup, placing the pan on a back burner for keeping, the sorrow lifted in small ways. We boiled down the lies in another pan until they disappeared. We washed that pan. Saul is on the road to Damascus, and he hears a voice and sees a vision. And before that moment, he believes in one truth, and after that moment, he believes in another. It's a funny thing, truth, because it's always exactly the same, and yet this experience of knowing one truth and then knowing another is a universal human experience. Now, Saul, who became Paul, he changed his name after this momentous event. He became who you might know as Saint Paul, Paul of Tarsus. He wrote many of the letters to the early church that are preserved in the Bible. He is perhaps single-handedly responsible for the spread of Christianity in the early decades after Jesus' death, and is certainly responsible for the spread of Christianity beyond the Jewish community where it began. He was a zealot, and actually we get the word zealot from his experience. He was part of a minority Jewish group at the time that was intent on persecuting people who did not follow the Jewish law exactly. And so he was rounding up Christians and taking them to the synagogue for punishment. This doesn't represent all of Judaism at the time. Jesus and this kind of zealotry and other Jewish movements, there were many Jewish movements at this time in Israel. Paul's just part of one of them. And he's on the road to Damascus, and he hears this voice and has this vision. And when he wakes up, he has been converted to the truth of Jesus' ministry. So he went from believing one thing to believing its opposite in this moment of conversion. And then he dedicated the rest of his life to the notion that people who were not ethnically or religiously Jewish could be Christians along with Jews. Christianity at the time was one of these Jewish movements. So what does that mean exactly? Which of these things is true? What does it mean that truth can change or be different one day to the next? This reveals something kind of strange about truth. One of the things I do here as your minister is lead small group ministries. There's the sign-up sheet is in the newsletter now if you'd like to be part of this year's small groups. Last year, we had a wonderful community, 2 different groups that met online throughout the year. And one of the topics we discussed towards the end of the year was truth. And in both groups, they drew from themselves their truth, which is there are 2 different kinds of truth. There is the truth that is always true, the same no matter what, persistent throughout time and space, the law of gravity. Force, F equals ma. Love can be shared between people, truths that are immutable. But there's another kind of truth, the small group said, and both small groups agreed on this, even though they didn't talk to each other. There is a personal truth that people have, their truth, something they know. And of course, we know that that is true as well, because people know truths about their own state of feeling. People know truths about their sexual identity or their gender identity, or how they feel about something that happened to them, or how much pain they're in. And that truth cannot be judged by anybody else. It is true to them, and their experience of it is all that matters. So it's clear, it was clear to the small groups, and I agree with them, it's clear that there are two different kinds of truth, and one is objective and one is personal. But can anything be a personal truth? Right now in America, millions of people are refusing to take the COVID vaccine, even though it leads to illness, hospitalization, death, even though it puts their family members and their neighbors at risk. Can that be a personal truth? If science tells us something, are we able to personally say that's not true for me? Perhaps as many as 5% of Americans are claiming a personal truth about the COVID vaccines. They are saying that it is against their religion to get the COVID vaccine. That despite scientific evidence, they claim a truth for themselves that they do not need or should not get this life-saving measure. And we live in a world where even easily verifiable facts, like the outcome of an election with ballots, come under attack and are doubted by a significant number of Americans. In our covenant, we profess that we gather in the love of truth. We are called to live that covenant when truth is under attack. Now, we might be tempted to say that one kind of truth is about evidence and the other kind is about belief. But even objective truth requires some amount of trust in other people, in experts, in the future, trust in things we don't understand, and decisions based in values and priority. I recently had a conversation around a campfire with a friend about financial planning. And my friend, Chris, they said that whether or not to plan financially for the future was a conversation they had with their spouse all the time. Their spouse believed in a 401k and making plans for the children's college education and saving money for the future. But Chris believed in planting Jerusalem artichokes in the garden and making sure that a well was dug against the disaster that was surely coming. Chris thinks it doesn't matter how much money we have in a bank account if all banking is going to be destroyed by an environmental disaster. So here's something that's verifiable given enough time. You could write an experiment on these two different points of view to know which one is true. All you have to do is wait 30 years and see which person turned out to be right. That doesn't help Chris in their marriage. Knowing what to do on any given occasion with any given problem relies not only on the evidence of our senses, but on trust and understanding of the world around us. We have to rely on things we're not in charge of and trust details we do not necessarily understand in order to arrive at the right thing to do. Even scientific truth is dependent on trust in institutions and experts. The entire system of scientific understanding and discovery is based on building upon the understandings of others. Publishing research, testing it by running the experiments again, taking those results and doing something new, not understanding or testing every single thing oneself, but working as part of a community, a global community of furthering science. And even here, falsehoods can creep in. You just think of the evils that science has been put to over the years. Science that once told us that there were biological differences in races that indicated what some people with one skin color could do versus people with another skin color. Or science that told us that women were biologically limited compared to men. Or even falsehoods that creep in because institutions themselves are human and fallible. The modern anti-vax movement got its start when the respected British scientific journal, The Lancet, published a study in 1998, which has since been retracted and discredited, purporting to show a link between the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and autism in children. This was a scientific paper that seemed to have been based on good research that was published by a well-known journal. And that mistake, a mistake on the part of the editors and peer reviewers at The Lancet, spawned the entire anti-vaccine movement, which led to outbreaks of measles in Southern California before the pandemic and which contributes to the resistance to the COVID vaccine today. And another thing we hear from vaccine-hesitant people, besides that fear of what the scientific establishment might get wrong, we hear, "I'll do my own research." But with complex matters, that is not possible. I have to confess, I myself only have a basic understanding of how the vaccine works. I rely on clever TikTok videos that use examples of people with forks on their hands and web comics that describe the vaccine as creating blueprints of the Death Star, to understand how the vaccine works. Because not only am I not a scientist, I am certainly not a microbiologist. I do not have the background to understand exactly how these vaccines work. I have to trust the people who do understand that. And I have to trust our elected officials who tell us what's good for our public health. No matter what, whether we're trying to understand something about God or something about the world we live in or something about complicated science, trust in something we do not completely understand is required. And that kind of trust is based in the networks of human community and institutions which has been broken down over the last 40 years in America. We are very susceptible to the media we consume. You know, I've been preparing for this sermon, I've been trying to think about why is there this movement of vaccine hesitancy in America? Who benefits? I actually have an easier time understanding the big lie about the 2020 election than I do the lies about the vaccine. Because if you don't take the vaccine, your chances of dying from COVID skyrocket. So who wants that? Who would want themselves and their neighbors and their family members or their voters, their constituents, to be at risk of death? All I have been able to do is get at understanding the problem, at what might cause it, but I can't come to any firm conclusions. One thing is that we are susceptible to the media we consume, and that includes us. We are susceptible to the media we consume. Perhaps we ought to consume less of it and connect with our deepest values more as a kind of inoculation against lies. There was a study done of people who watched Tucker Carlson versus Sean Hannity at the beginning of the pandemic. Now, these two men, they host two of the conservative TV talk shows with the biggest audiences in America. But at the very beginning of the pandemic, February 2020, when we were just beginning to hear about this illness that was in China and maybe it's now in Washington State, and people do seem to be dying, and what should we do? How seriously should we take it? Tucker Carlson came down on the side that COVID is dangerous and that people needed to do what they could to avoid illness, that they ought to take advice and stay away from crowds and keep themselves healthy. Whereas Sean Hannity said that COVID was not a big deal and that it was not risky and it was no more dangerous than the flu. And Sean Hannity's viewers experienced 20% more deaths by the beginning of April than Tucker Carlson's viewers. That's how powerful the media is. A 20% difference in deaths. So I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, what can we do about this? Especially if you yourself got vaccinated as soon as possible and, like me, perhaps don't understand the mindset of people who refuse to get vaccinated. This is where the love of truth becomes a value that we are called to live in the world. Because right now in our country, anti-vaccine groups are dealing death to our neighbors and loved ones. We need to live out our values of believing in science and trusting in community, in public health and what we can do, and we need to support boundaries and measures to encourage vaccination. There are groups on Facebook that deny the vaccine and insist that horse dewormer is the only correct treatment to coronavirus, against all evidence. These groups are encouraging family members to insist that hospitals treat their loved ones with this ineffective medicine, and are even going so far as to coach people to pull their loved ones out of the ICU and treat them at home with the horse medicine, if that's what it takes. Being in the ICU is likely the only hope that these people who are very sick with COVID have to stay alive. These lies are dealing death. They are pernicious. They are going to lead to the deaths of very sick people. And it's easy to lay blame at the feet of the people who believe those lies, but they themselves are caught in a trap set by someone else. They are like me. They don't know enough about the science to know how the vaccine works. They would need trust, faith in science, in government, and in experts in order to trust the vaccine. Faith in something larger than themselves, even if they can't see where the voice is coming from and even if they don't know why it's there. That trust and faith has been eroded by 40 years of efforts to convince people that the government hates them and wishes them ill. We just finished the term of a president who actively encouraged armed rioters to attack the US Capitol. This kind of erosion of truth has consequences. We know the consequences of lies in our own relationships: disharmony, ill trust, broken connections, broken hearts. In our society, the consequences of lies about the COVID vaccine are the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans. So I'm sorry to tell you that our options are limited. There's not a lot of evidence that trying to convince somebody who has a strongly held belief works at all. Some people can convert, like Paul on the road to Damascus, convert from one truth to another. And so perhaps our job as individuals and as a society is to create the opportunity for that kind of conversion and to let go of being right. So I believe strongly in vaccine mandates. They've been shown to work. We don't need people to change what they are thinking about the vaccine if we can change how they behave about the vaccine, very in keeping with our Unitarian Universalist values around creeds and deeds. We believe in the deeds. So if someone is still not quite sure if it's the right thing to do, but they go ahead and get vaccinated because there's a mandate at their employment, that has a good outcome for society as a whole. Supporting those kind of boundaries, supporting the mask mandate that Worcester has put back in place for indoor spaces, doing our part, that is part of what we can do as a society. And then the other part that we can do is to live our own values out loud, to stay engaged in relationship with people who might disagree with us, and talk about why we chose to protect ourselves, why we choose to wear a mask, why this pathway was important to us. It's not the same as convincing. It is simply living your truth in public, being who you are, grounded in your values in relationship with others. Our goodness as people, the goodness of all people, comes from the source of our inherent worth and dignity, the God who knows us and names us, the Spirit of our lives. We are called to live our lives out of those deep values and show those values to the people around us, even those who might disagree. We can do this best in authentic, in-person relationships, and we can support strong boundaries that protect everyone's safety. We gather in covenant to love the truth, a power that conquers death. I love you all. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 293 in your gray hymnal, O Star of Truth. Please rise in body or spirit to sing. Go forth into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast that which is good. Render to no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the afflicted. Honor everyone. Love and serve the holy, rejoicing in the power of the Spirit forever. Amen. Please be seated for the postlude.
Amen.